It started out like any other quiet weekend. I was finally enjoying some peace in my own backyard, the sun dipping low, the bubbles in my jacuzzi rising just right, until I heard the laughter. Not the fun kind. It's the chaotic, way too many people kind. At first I thought maybe my neighbors were just having a gathering. But when I peeked over the fence, I saw something that made my jaw drop. There, in my very own backyard, my jacuzzi was bubbling full of strangers, teenagers blasting music, splashing water everywhere, red Solo cups floating like party favors, and leading the entire scene. Karen's daughter. Now, if you've been around the neighborhood long enough, you know Karen. She's the kind of neighbor who holds HOA meetings about lawn height and leaves passive-aggressive notes about trash bins, but her daughter. She somehow found a way past my locked gate and decided my jacuzzi was the perfect place to throw her little private party. No permission, no heads up, just straight-up trespassing. I stormed over, obviously shocked and angry, and asked what on earth was going on. That's when Karen's daughter looked me dead in the eye and said, "My mom said it was fine." My heart dropped. Surely, Karen hadn't actually told her daughter it was okay to break into someone else's backyard, right? But then Karen showed up, and instead of apologizing, she doubled down. She claimed there was some sort of misunderstanding, said her daughter thought it was a shared amenity, and even accused me of overreacting, as if I was the one throwing a rager in someone else's backyard. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a neighborly dispute anymore. What started as a trespassing incident spiraled into a heated confrontation and eventually the courtroom. And believe me, Karen wasn't ready for what came next. Stick around, because this story takes some wild turns. And trust me, you won't believe how far Karen went once she realized just how deep her daughter had dragged her into the mess. Karen had always been a thorn in everyone's side around here. She walked around the block like she owned the place, constantly peeking over fences and reporting every little thing to the HOA. Once, she complained because someone had their Halloween decorations up a day too early. Another time, she reported, a neighbor's kids were playing basketball too loudly at 4 p.m. So, I saw her marching into my yard, arms crossed, and that signature condescending smirk on her face. I already knew this wasn't going to end with an apology, she claimed. The gate had been unlocked, which was a lie. I always keep it padlocked. She said her daughter assumed the jacuzzi was community property, which made zero sense. My yard is clearly fenced, and there's nothing communal about it. And then she hit me with the classic Karen line. This could have all been avoided if you'd just been more neighborly. Meanwhile, the kids were still partying. One kid nearly slipped getting out of the jacuzzi. Water spilled everywhere. And the worst part? Someone had taken my outdoor Bluetooth speaker, synced it to their phone, and was blasting music like it was a club. I kept looking around, thinking, how did this even happen? Turns out Karen's daughter had been eyeing my place for weeks. She had been telling her friends that her mom had access to a private jacuzzi right next door, and that it was cool to use it whenever. So the moment I went out of town for a night, just one night, she jumped the fence, unlatched the gate from the inside, and started texting out invites. By the time I caught them, the damage was already done. But what Karen didn't know, or maybe just didn't care about, was that I had security cameras and they had recorded everything. What came next would take this neighborhood drama to a whole new level. The next morning, I sat down with a cup of coffee and started reviewing the security footage. My hands were still shaking from the night before. I couldn't believe what I was watching. Not only had Karen's daughter led the charge, but there were at least 15 teenagers entering through my side gate, carrying drinks, towels, and even a portable speaker. At one point, someone was recording the whole thing on their phone, posing like it was their own luxury backyard setup. The footage clearly showed how they broke in, how long they stayed, and the condition they left everything in: torn up grass, soaked cushions, scratches on the jacuzzi's acrylic surface, and footprints all over my patio furniture. But here's where things got interesting. Later that same day, I received a message from another neighbor, someone I rarely talk to. But they'd heard about the party. They asked if I had given permission because Karen had been telling people it was all pre-approved. That's when I realized this wasn't just a one-time sneak-in. Karen had been planting seeds, dropping comments around the neighborhood, like I had offered up my backyard for her daughter's use. She was trying to build her own version of the story in case things blew up, which they were now doing fast. A few other parents reached out, confused and concerned. One of them admitted their kid thought the party was organized with my blessing, and that Karen's daughter had said I was on board because I was cool with the HOA. The irony was painful. Karen was the one constantly pushing for more HOA rules, and now she was using the association's name to make it seem like she had some sort of authority. Meanwhile, I started getting cold shoulders from a couple of neighbors who believed Karen's version that I was blowing this out of proportion for attention. One even hinted that I was being dramatic over just a little water and noise. But what none of them knew was that this wasn't just about a party. It was about property rights, trust, and the fact that Karen was manipulating the entire neighborhood to cover for her daughter's actions. And she was just getting started by midweek. Things had taken a sharp turn. The HOA sent me an email saying they'd received multiple complaints about an alleged unauthorized gathering in my yard. I stared at the message in disbelief. Karen had actually flipped the story and dragged me into HOA trouble for a party I didn't even know about until it was halfway over. I sent them the footage right away, thinking that would clear things up. But then the real kicker came. Karen filed a complaint of her own, accusing me of having unsafe conditions around my jacuzzi that led to her daughter's friend slipping and falling. It was like a bad joke. The same people who trespassed on my property were now turning the blame on me. And not just with words, Karen was threatening legal action, saying her daughter's friend might need medical attention and that it was my responsibility. I hadn't even had time to process the fact that kids were injured during their unauthorized party. And now I was the one being painted as careless. I started hearing whispers around the neighborhood. People were taking sides. Some were disgusted by Karen's actions, while others, mostly the ones she'd been cozying up to for years, started avoiding me. One neighbor even asked if I had really invited underage kids over without supervision. That stung. My reputation was being dragged through the mud over something I never even did. The tension reached a boiling point when a letter from Karen's attorney landed in my mailbox. It claimed emotional distress, property defects, and negligence. She was actually going through with it. Meanwhile, I had already met with a lawyer of my own who assured me that the security footage, texts, and property photos told a completely different story. But even with the truth on my side, the stress kept building. Karen had a way of twisting facts so fast it made your head spin, and it felt like she wasn't just trying to win a case. She was trying to destroy me, piece by piece. And the worst part? The biggest blow was still coming. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, another twist dropped, this time from the last person I expected. One of the teenagers who had been at the jacuzzi party messaged me anonymously through social media. At first, I thought it was a prank, but the message was detailed. The kid said he felt guilty and wanted to clear his conscience. What he shared blew the lid off everything. Apparently, the party hadn't been a spontaneous idea like Karen had claimed. Her daughter had been planning it for over a month, and Karen knew. She didn't just turn a blind eye. She helped. According to the message, Karen was the one who suggested the time, knowing I'd be out of town for the night. She had even joked about how fancy my setup looked and how it was going to waste on someone who barely used it. There were screenshots, photos, even a group chat where Karen's daughter bragged about having special permission. From her mom to use the neighbor's hot tub. I sat there, stunned. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was premeditated trespassing with Karen's fingerprints all over it. She hadn't just covered for her daughter, she'd encouraged the whole thing, and now she was trying to sue me. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, but the weight of it all still sat heavy on my chest. Because if this got out, and it wouldn't just shake up the neighborhood. It would explode. The HOA, the other parents, everyone who had taken Karen's side would realize they'd been played, and Karen? She'd go from smug to exposed in a matter of seconds. But what I didn't know then was that Karen had one more move up her sleeve. One that would push this entire drama over the edge and drag both of us into a showdown no one saw coming. The court date finally arrived. I walked in with everything security footage, screenshots from the group chat, and statements from 2 other parents who'd come around after learning the truth. Karen sat across the room, her arms folded, still, wearing that smug look like she had it all under control. Her daughter didn't even show up, which didn't help her case. My lawyer laid everything out clearly. The unauthorized entry, the property damage, the false claims, and most importantly, Karen's active involvement in planning it all. When the judge saw the screenshots of Karen literally helping organize the event, her entire argument fell apart. Her face went pale, and she stopped looking anyone in the eye. The HOA president, who had shown up to observe, looked like he was ready to melt into the floor. The moment the footage of the teens hopping the fence played on the screen, the courtroom went dead silent. Then came the real kicker. My lawyer handed over a final piece of evidence. A recent post from Karen's daughter's now deleted social media account, bragging about how they tricked the old guy next door and made it look like his fault. It was over. The judge dismissed Karen's lawsuit immediately and ruled in my favor, ordering her to pay for all damages, legal fees, and issue a formal apology. You'd think that would be the end of it. But then came the twist. The HOA, humiliated by how deeply involved their former Golden member had been, decided to take action. Karen was removed from her committee seat. And just when the dust was starting to settle, I got one more letter, this time from a different neighbor. Turns out, this wasn't the first time Karen had crossed a line. There were other stories, other lies. And now the neighborhood had receipts. The story wasn't just about a hijacked jacuzzi anymore. It was about finally unmasking the person who'd been hiding behind HOA rules and fake smiles for years. After the courtroom fallout, everything slowly started to return to normal, or at least a new kind of normal. Karen disappeared from most HOA meetings, and her usual flyers and neighborhood emails stopped showing up. People who